will be behind the mic once again for Floyd Mayweather versus Robert Guerrero live on Showtime this Saturday. Steve Farhood joins us. Steve, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Not too bad. Steve, you've been at Showtime for a very long time. You've kind of grown up as a broadcaster there. So I imagine that seeing your channel now pick up the biggest fights, the biggest fight out there right now, is that much more exciting.
Oh, very much so. You know, the beauty of a big fight in boxing is that when it occurs, the world kind of stops, and all the focus is on Las Vegas and that ring. You know, what's happening. If you're watching, you're into it. If you're not watching, you want to know what's happening. And it only happens for the real big fights. And I think Floyd Mayweather at this point qualifies as that kind of fighter and fights in those kind of fights.
Now, your role on Showtime Championship Boxing has changed a little bit. You're kind of like the New York Yankees of boxing television right now. You've scooped up every great broadcaster available. What's it like working with that new, bigger team?
Well, it has changed a lot, the roster, over the last couple of years. You know, Mo Rinaldo is fantastic. He's a great guy who has a real passion for boxing. And, you know, we love that. And he also knows boxing pretty well, which is a big help, because not every blow-by-blow announcer knows boxing. You know, usually they're professional broadcasters who are doing boxing. But in his case, he knows the game. And Paulie surprised the hell out of me, because I've done broadcasting with Paulie at the local level on Broadway Boxing, the Lou DiBella shows we do here. And every once in a while, he'd sit in with us and chip in, and he'd be fine, nothing special. But as soon as he got the Showtime gig, he's been absolutely fantastic. I mean, really insightful, colorful. You know, he brings a whole dynamic to it, and I think he works great with Al Bernstein. So the team is great. You know, Brian Kenny is about as good an announcer as there is. He can do anything, and he's the perfect host. So I'm happy to have a small little role on it.
Paulie is kind of making things difficult for everyone trying to break in. I imagine he's going to be there for a long time. I don't know how anyone's going to top him.
Exactly right. And the beauty of Paulie right now is that we get the build-up for the Broner fight, which is absolutely, it's going to be ridiculous. I mean, absurd in some ways, you know, so wild that it's going to be macabre and bizarre. But we get that build-up and the fight on Showtime when it's one of our own. You know, we went through that with Tarver, with Antonio Tarver. And it's a very difficult thing for the broadcasters, because obviously we have a personal relationship with Paulie. We like him a lot. And he's going to be fighting on our air, and you have to suspend that personal relationship and call the fight as it is, and it's kind of difficult to do.
Well, let's talk about the fight at hand. We'll get to their press conference later on in the week. Mayweather versus Guerrero. You're a broadcaster, but you're also a fan, Steve. Now, even though the odds are set at 10-1 in some cases favoring Floyd, are you going into Saturday night expecting a competitive main event?
Well, you know, to me, Corey, it's all about Floyd. If Floyd is still Floyd and can raise his game as he's done so many times in the past, then he wins the fight, and I think he wins the fight perhaps easily. But if his lack of movement and mobility and his willingness to trade a little bit that we saw in the Cotto fight, if that's the new Floyd, because he's feeling he's 36 years old, then Guerrero could be his worst nightmare. Because we know that Robert is going to be a physical fighter. He's going to get inside, and he's going to rough Floyd up if Floyd doesn't have the legs to move. So it really depends on Floyd, which is often the case when you have the best fighter in boxing. If he's himself, he's going to win. If he's vulnerable because of age, then everybody could be very surprised.
I was going to say that Floyd likes to say that there is no blueprint to beat him, but people who try to draw one up would tend to suggest that the man to beat him would be a southpaw and would put pressure on him for 12 rounds, and that kind of fits the Robert Guerrero description. From what you've seen of him, do you think that he has what it takes to make a competitive fight?
Well, you know, we think of Zab Judah after 4 rounds, you know, being ahead of Mayweather, but Zab's southpaw style is very different from Guerrero's. Even Chop Chop Corley, you know, more of a boxer as a southpaw than a pressure fighter. Guerrero, interestingly, coming up from lightweight, jumping all the way to welter, has been very physical. We saw it in the Berto fight. So I don't think he necessarily fits the same mold as the other southpaws who gave Mayweather trouble. As a boxer, I don't think he can compete with Floyd. You know, you can try to outbox Floyd as Oscar did, you know, and the jab is the key weapon there, but Guerrero doesn't have Oscar's length or his jab. So, hey, Guerrero's best chance is to rough Floyd up, get on the inside, and do what he did with Berto. Or try to, anyway.
Well, let's flip this around again, because 2 fights ago, Guerrero was in tough with Seljuk Aydin, who has now since lost to Jesus Soto Karass, and then he went the distance with Giuseppe Lowry not too long ago. Was there anything in that fight or in that Berto fight that you just referenced that you can pinpoint instantly that, yeah, Floyd can exploit this?
Well, I think the positives for Guerrero is that when he fought Aydin, Aydin was undefeated and was as physically strong as any welterweight in the world. And Iden, with a loss, is not the same fighter. So I give Guerrero credit. I thought that was a very, very risky fight to take in his first fight in the division. What we did see, though, is that Guerrero can be hit, and he takes a good punch. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I go back with him several years, almost 10 years, when he started on Showbox as a young featherweight. And he's always had a good chin. But having a good chin against Floyd isn't that great a thing to have, because Floyd's not a big puncher, but he'll hit you again and again. And Floyd's right hand is going to be landing. So that we saw with Iden, that we even saw with Berto. Guerrero has the chin to take it.
Well, let's talk about the co-feature now, a pair of guys who can be hit and take a good punch and tend to throw quite a few of them. Abner Mares taking on Daniel Ponce de Leon. Mares jumping up to 126 to try to scoop up another title. Now, both these guys have actually shown to be pretty adaptable in the ring. So how do you envision this one unfolding, Steve?
Well, it's very interesting because Mares has become much more of a physical fighter over the last couple of years than we initially thought he was. You know, if he wins, that's 3 different divisions, world championships in 2.5 years. Quite impressive. But Ponce de Leon, he's biting off a lot here because de Leon has some highlight film knockouts to his credit. He can box. He can put pressure on. We saw it with Adrian Broner. This is a 50-50 fight, and I think a decent chance of stealing the show.
If Mares brings the heat, though, the way that he did against Anselmo Moreno, for example, or against Agbeko in the rematch, does he still have the firepower to keep him off, or is he kind of more of a spoiler at this point in his career?
Well, I think he does have the firepower for the simple reason that Mares is debuting at featherweight. You know, it wasn't long ago that Mares was a 118-pounder, and he was stronger and more aggressive than most guys in that division and at 122. But now 126, and you know, the uninitiated fan would say, hey, 4 pounds, what's the big deal? It is a big deal. You know, how much is Ponce de Leon going to weigh when he gets in the ring? So to see Mares fight his way and be effective at 126 is something we haven't seen yet. And there's always a question when a guy jumps like that, will he be the same fighter?
Moving along on what is a pretty packed undercard as compared to recent pay-per-view events. One of Mayweather's proteges, actually, J. Leon Love, gets his pay-per-view debut as well. He's going to be taking on Gabe Rosado. Steve, from what you saw of Jay Leon in Detroit when he faced Derek Finley, does he have the goods, or will it take a win over a guy like Rosado to sell you on him?
Definitely the latter. I mean, Jay Leon Love with Derek Finley in Detroit had it tough at times. He hasn't shown me yet that he can fight a focused fight throughout 8 or 10 rounds. And now he's making a big jump. And the only thing going for Jay Leon here is that Rosado's coming off a beating where he got cut badly and hurt against Gennady Golovkin, and Rosado would prefer fighting at 154 pounds, and he's fighting a strong middleweight at 160. So, you know, it's almost a pick-em fight to me. I mean, it's a huge step up. I give both Mayweather's promotional company and Love credit for taking this fight, but no risk, no reward. He's going to have a huge audience, and if he wins, he moves way up the ladder in terms of young American middleweights, of which there are not a lot of, by the way.
Well, also on the card, Leo Santa Cruz, who everyone always refers to as can't-miss TV. He's going to be taking on Alexander Munoz, who kind of ran the table in Japan a few years ago, making a few super flyweight title defenses. Tell the people, Steve, why should people tune in time early on in the telecast to see Leo instead of picking up those Tecates at 10 o'clock?
Well, Leo Santa Cruz is just all action. I mean, I don't care if he fights my sister. It's going to be entertaining because he's never going to be in a bad fight. He's always going to be a volume puncher throwing a lot of shots. And Alexander Munoz, granted, his best is probably past, and he was best at 115, and now he's fighting at 122. But he was a big puncher at 115 and remains, you know, that's how he fights. So, again, that should be an all-action fight. You have to make Santa Cruz a considerable favorite based on his youth. He's undefeated, etc. I think he'll come through. But it should be an action fight, and no dancers in this fight. Let's put it that way.
Well, Steve Farhood, to me, is always can't-miss television, so we're looking forward to seeing you on the call. It should be another great night. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
I appreciate it, Corey. All the best to you.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.